Toronto right now is a city bursting at the seams. Over the last decade into 2020, we've seen a boom of sorts. Now imagine over the next decade into 2030, more population, more density on another scale. Tonight we look into our crystal ball at the city of the future. The city skyline will be transformed once again. Hundreds of thousands more people are going to be moving about, not just living and working in the downtown core, but it will be busy everywhere. When we're looking a decade from now, how different is the city going to be?
I think it's going to be very different in that it's certainly going to be much bigger, and that's one of the reasons we have to make investments now in transit and affordable housing, because there's going to be like 1 million more people coming here in the next number of years.
That growth starts with more buildings continuing to pop up all over the city. Major intersections, transit corridors, shopping and entertainment centers, even in existing neighborhoods.
It's kind of an interesting way to think about the future of the city is the degree to which what you only see downtown sometimes is going to spread out across the city, built on a whole network of really much better transit.
The history of transit has, of course, been cursed in this city with little done in decades past. The hope is that GO expansion and the Ontario line will be added to the already busy Eglinton Crosstown, finally giving commuters more options and relief.
What's interesting about Toronto is if the values of this city, the diversity and the concerns about equity and the concerns about the environment, if those can be brought into the companies that are formed here and into the public policy that's formed here, there's a real possibility that Toronto can be a place that becomes a model for how other cities are going to develop.
Housing, however, is a daunting task, and Toronto in 2030 will likely be fighting the same battle to find affordable space for a much larger population, despite best-laid plans. Can we do that in 10 years?
You know what? We've got to do that in 10 years, but we've got to think that you aim for a goal. We've got a goal of 40,000 units, for example. We've got an action plan. We've got a really robust roadmap. Now we have to get at it.
So what's going to drive that growth and the economy? One word to sum it all up would be technology. How it's going to be incorporated into our everyday lives, but how this city is going to be a major influencer as well. When we look at Toronto over the next year or two, it's quite easy to project what kind of path we're on. What the city will look like in a decade from now, though, is another matter. And that's why we've turned to the experts tonight to tell us what kind of business will help this city become even more successful than it already is in 2030. The way we live, work, and move in Toronto in 2030 will all be dependent on technology.
Things like working from home and remote work, things like autonomous driving in vehicles, things like how will automation or artificial intelligence impact the tasks that we do.
They are the trends that we're seeing today coming to fruition, thanks to tech innovation being developed here and a business sector that has made this city the place to be.
Where Toronto today is globally defined for our innovation talent and our innovation research, we have been lagging actually applying that technology to solutions. By 2030, we'll see made in Toronto innovations, solving transit issues, getting housing built much more quickly.
Despite a projected downturn in Canada's economy by 2030, Toronto's Board of Trade sees not just Toronto, but the region booming with a network of specialized workforces in different areas. Toronto's arts and culture industry will have a larger impact on the world. The music scene will have more influence, new major cultural attractions will exist, and the film industry will be bigger than ever.
Working towards a $3 billion production capacity for screen-based. What you're next going to see is the bringing online of some major studio production capacity, also some post-production capacity, and the new talent to come and make that all work.
The biggest impact on the city by 2030 will come from a new generation specializing in careers that have yet to be created. The more than 240,000 tech-related jobs Toronto has now will seem small in comparison.
And there's a quote attributed to Bill Gates that says we always overestimate the impact of these trends in 2 years, but underestimate the impact in 10 years. And I think when we look at artificial intelligence, automation, remote work, all these things are going to have an enormous impact, both organically and inorganically in our lives in 10 years.
We can already see the shift happening in Toronto, and by 2030, most of that will have come to fruition. The region should be working as a whole, more so than Toronto itself. That said, there's only so much the experts can do to predict the future.